What's up, y'all? In my career of making grains, I've only tried corn one time. And that was when I first started doing any sort of mycology. So today, we're going to tackle the corn monster. We're going to use whole corn. Shout out to Sporehead. He's the popcorn king. Mycoblast. Also another corn legend. So, what's up, guys? Today, we tackle the corn monster. I've only ever used corn once. Second time I ever tried grains was corn. My jars look like funfetti cakes. But today, there will be success. And I'm winging it. So we're just going to cook corn like I do Milo. And see how it goes with a couple different tests throughout the process, which will be on video. So we soaked these grains overnight with a warm water soak. That expands the grains a little bit just before the simmer starts the process of cooking throughout the grain, so you don't get endospores, I'm pretty sure is what it's called. Basically, you want to cook the grain all the way through, not too much to where it's mushy. It is storming right now. Thank you. So we're doing this in the garage today. 1 bucket of grain per pot. 50-quart pot. Get it on Amazon. You're going to want a half of a karate chop's worth of water above your grains. The reason being is because your grains are going to expand during the simmering process. Shout out to Ms. Gagne, my 10th grade science teacher. We did a super saturation project in class. It kind of really clicked now with making grains, right? Because what's the point of making a grain? We got to hydrate the grain as much as possible with minimal amount of breakage. So we really got to push it to its limit and see how much water whatever grain you're using can handle, as well as heat, before it's too late. Crank that. Light that. You may be wondering, why do I start from a cold start? And here's my answer. With a cold start, you allow the water and the grains to get up to temperature at the same time, rather than heating up the water and then putting grains into the hot water, which messes up the mojo of the pot. If you really put making grains into another aspect of life, such as like possibly making rice, it's kind of the same thing. I feel like if you could make perfect rice, you could probably make a perfect batch of grains. But obviously with like tweaks here and there. So we cold start and we mix throughout, allowing all of the grains to experience the same exact temperature, instead of the bottom ones heating up too much and the top ones not experiencing the same amount of heat. So while we swirl, mix, we optimize the, I guess, the evenness of the cook. Oh, corn pop looking at. I make grains in conditions that shut E4s down for a day. I'm built different. Just cooking corn in a storm. A lot of this stuff I'm teaching you in this video is going to be universal to making, any kind of grain. For the most part, it's kind of all the same thing, right? There's going to be tweaks as far as, the amount you're making, different kind of grain, but it's all pretty much just taking grains, soaking them for 24 hours, putting them in the pots, simmering them until they expand without breaking, and then you dry them. The drying part is arguably one of the most important parts of the entire process. Honestly, the whole entire process is extremely important. But if you mess up the dry, you could mess up all of the work that you did previously in the simmer. You dry them too much, then the supersaturation of the grain becomes redundant, right? And then there's not going to be any hydration left in the grain, and then your mycelium isn't going to really be able to move the way it wants to, because it's going to be dehydrated, or at least in a dehydrated medium. So yeah, when you're drying the grains, you want the outside of the grain to be dry, and you want the inside of it to be moist and cooked. If the outside of the grain is too wet, then there's going to be a lot of water in your bag, and then that's kind of going to drown out your mycelium. So it has to be just right. The porridge has to be just right for it to work out. This is what a grain looks like before it's been cooked. Now, see that little white in there? From my understanding, you're going to want it to look, it's kind of like the egg yolk color. The white can germinate endospores, and that will then lead to your bags contaminating with bacterial infection. Bacillus, I think it is. Super gross. It's like lacto something bacteria, because you see it like makes like a creamy, not so good cream in your bag. It sucks. Improperly prepared grains is not the only thing it comes from, though. You can also get it from cultures. Got this from an Amazon culture, and this is kind of what a bacteria infection looks like. It makes your grain bag smell like a sour apple, and the mycelium just cannot grow through it. It's bad news bears. Up until now, I've been stirring the pot roughly every 5 to 6 minutes for 35 minutes. But when the pot starts to bubbling like this one's a little further ahead than that one, I switch to stirring roughly every 2 minutes. The water's getting hotter. There's more of a chance for your grains to overcook, and this is a crucial stage in the simmering process. Now the grains and the water are the same temperature roughly, and we're entering the already cooked, about to be overcooked phase. Your drying rack is an extremely important piece of equipment, and it can be made from basically anything. With the drying racks, if there's a will, there's a way. Let me show you an example. I have used this drying rack, actually 2 of them, for the past 3 to 4 years. If you've ever purchased a grain bag from me, your grains have been dried on this drying rack up until the past month. It's an old bin, 70-gallon bin from Home Depot that I used to use to make substrate in, but I broke it. So then I threw some wooden slats on it, got some fencing from Home Depot, some heavy-duty pet screen. Boom. Turn that into a nice little drying rack. Perfect. For 1 to 2 bags of grain. I just made this Mac Daddy. Holds pretty much the same amount as the other 2 bins, but there's a lot more ventilation on the bottom, allowing for the grains to dry faster. On the left is a grain that was soaked overnight, and on the right is a grain that has been simmering for just under an hour. As you can see, the one on the right is much more thoroughly cooked through, but it still needs a little more time. After an hour and 5 minutes of being in the water, this pot seems like the grains are ready to go. This one still needs a few more minutes. Looking nice and plump, thoroughly cooked, and not breaking too much. Another way to tell if your grains are cooking is just by the scoop. When the grains are more hydrated and larger, the scoop will be thicker in comparison to when they were at a cold start. So with being able to, they call it the bite test, or just cut it in half and see the inside, the scoop, and seeing if any of the grains are burst, you can really start to dial in on the hydration levels of your grain and the process of you learning how to create your own grain bags. With that being said, it's been about an hour and 15 minutes and the pot on the right is still cooking. So corn is taking much longer than Milo does for the simmer. An hour and 16 minutes, turned off the right pot. Now I'm chucking those on the drying rack. Your grains have been in the drying rack for 20 to 30 minutes. Don't be afraid to, mix them up with your hand. Take your paddle, mix it up. You're going to want to disperse the moisture in the grains, right? Take the bottom ones, put them on top. Take the top ones, put them on bottom. We're going to allow our grains to dry just as evenly as we cooked our grains. The whole process is about doing it slow and steady. A way to tell how your grains, if your grains are dry enough, is doing a paper towel test. Fairly simple test. You grab a paper towel, you put some grains on top, and you let them sit on top of the paper towel for a few seconds. After a few seconds is up, remove them from the paper towel. If the paper towel is showing little dots of moisture, they could be dried a bit more. If the paper towel is dry, your grains are dry and ready to be bagged up. It is as simple as grabbing some corn, putting it on a paper towel. As you can see, some of the grains burst. That's okay, as long as they all don't burst. Plus, it makes it a little easier for the mycelium to eat. As you can see, we got no wet spots on the paper towel. If anything, maybe one. And that tells me these grains are dry enough that we can remove them, put them in a different bin, and start the second process. We'll start the process all over again. The grains have been drying for about 40-ish minutes, and I've mixed them around a couple of times. And yeah, thanks for joining me on this corn journey. We're going to sterilize up these bags and try to use them. See how they colonize in comparison to my second time ever making any form of grain. Much love. We'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.